Imagine a spiritual tradition bold enough to question one of the biggest ideas humanity has ever created, the idea of a single, all-powerful God. A tradition that suggests the path to awakening isn't handed down from the heavens, but grows from the quiet corners of your own mind and heart. And if you think that sounds provocative, you're absolutely right. Something led you to stop scrolling and land here at this exact moment. And no, it's not random. This topic has stirred debate for centuries, and tonight you're stepping right into the center of that conversation. So let's start with the obvious question. Why do so many Buddhist teachings avoid the concept of God altogether? Why does a tradition known for compassion and deep wisdom take such a different approach from most major religions? And what does that mean for anyone searching for truth, peace, or clarity in their life? Before we go any further, buckle up. This isn't going to be a simple yes or no discussion. It's a journey into a way of thinking that flips a lot of assumptions upside down. If you're curious, open-minded, or just ready for something refreshing, then you're exactly where you need to be. Let's begin. Before we dive deeper, let's set the tone clearly. This video isn't here to dismiss anyone's faith, challenge your devotion, or convince you to abandon any belief you hold dear. Spirituality is deeply personal, and every path deserves respect. What we're doing here is simple. Exploration, not confrontation. One of the most beautiful things about Buddhism is its openness. It doesn't demand blind loyalty. It doesn't punish questions. In fact, questioning is part of the journey. You're encouraged to examine, investigate, and think for yourself, even if it means challenging the tradition itself. So to understand why Buddhism stands apart from many religions when the topic of God comes up, we first need a shared definition. When most people say God, they're referring to a supreme creator, all-knowing, all-powerful, the architect of the universe, a being who designs, oversees, and ultimately governs everything that exists. That's the framework most of us grew up with. And it's important we acknowledge that before comparing it to a spiritual tradition that approaches reality from a completely different angle. If you're someone who believes deeply, you're welcome here. If you're skeptical or curious, you're welcome here too. This is a safe space to explore big questions without fear or judgment. Now that we're on the same page, let's take the next step and look at what the Buddha actually taught and why his focus was so radically different. When people first hear that Buddhism doesn't center around a creator God, they assume it must be a rejection or denial. But the truth is far more nuanced and far more practical. The Buddha wasn't interested in building theories about who created the universe or what cosmic forces might be running things behind the scenes. His mission was laser-focused: help human beings end suffering right here, right now. Anything that didn't directly contribute to that goal, he simply set aside. There's a famous pattern in Buddhist texts. Whenever someone asked the Buddha big metaphysical questions, was the universe created by a divine being? Is the soul eternal? Does God control our fate? The Buddha often responded with silence, not because he didn't have an opinion, but because he understood something profound. Speculating about the beginning of the cosmos doesn't relieve the pain in your heart. It doesn't calm anxiety, soften anger, or free you from fear. He compared such questions to a man shot with an arrow who refuses treatment until he knows the name of the archer, the type of wood, the angle of the bow. By the time he gets his answers, he's already dying. The Buddha's focus was simple: heal the wound first. Understanding the universe can wait. Here's where a lot of misunderstandings begin. When people hear that Buddhism doesn't revolve around a creator God, many instantly assume it must be an atheistic tradition. But that assumption misses the mark. Buddhism doesn't deny the existence of divine beings, nor does it claim that no higher powers exist. It simply approaches the question from a completely different angle. In most Western frameworks, you're either a theist, believing in a supreme creator who designed and governs the universe, or an atheist, rejecting that idea entirely. Buddhism doesn't sit comfortably in either camp. It's best understood as non-theistic, a path that doesn't build its foundation on the concept of a creator God, because that concept isn't required for awakening. Yes, Buddhist cultures talk about deities, celestial beings, guardians, and enlightened figures, but these beings are not creators, judges, or cosmic command centers. They don't control fate or dictate the workings of the universe. Instead, they function as symbolic expressions of inner qualities: compassion, clarity, courage, patience, wisdom. They're a language of imagery and inspiration, not almighty forces deciding what happens to you. So Buddhism isn't rejecting God. It's simply saying that liberation doesn't depend on a divine architect. The transformation you're searching for happens in the mind and the heart, not through obedience to a cosmic ruler. And that perspective sets Buddhism apart in a profound and refreshing way. If there's one idea that separates Buddhism from most spiritual traditions, it's this: you don't have to wait for someone else to save you. Your freedom, your clarity, your peace, they're not gifts handed down by a divine figure. They're built from the inside out, through your own choices and your own understanding. That's not meant to pressure you. It's meant to empower you. Think of it this way. Most of us grow up believing that answers come from outside, from a teacher, a religious figure, a sacred book, or a higher being who knows what's best for us. The Buddha flipped that script completely. He taught that every human being carries a hidden capacity for awakening, almost like a superhero identity waiting quietly beneath the surface. You're not broken, and you're not dependent on anything outside yourself. You already contain the potential for wisdom and compassion. You just haven't learned how to access it yet. That's why one of the Buddha's final teachings was so powerful. Be a lamp unto yourself. Not because you should reject help or guidance, but because the brightest light you'll ever follow is the one coming from within your own awareness. In a way, Buddhism hands you the keys to your own transformation. It doesn't ask you to outsource responsibility to the heavens. It doesn't tell you that salvation lies in pleasing a deity or hoping for blessings. Instead, it invites you to look honestly at your mind, your habits, your fears, your reactions, and to recognize that these are the things shaping your reality. It's a radical message. Your life changes when you change. And far from being intimidating, that truth is incredibly liberating, because it means the power you've been searching for has been yours all along. To understand why Buddhism doesn't rely on a divine judge or cosmic overseer, we have to look at three of its most foundational teachings: karma, rebirth, and the principle of non-self. Together, they form a worldview where responsibility, transformation, and freedom all originate from within, not from the hands of a higher power. Let's start with karma, a concept that's often misunderstood. In Buddhism, karma isn't about punishment or reward handed down by a supernatural being. It's much simpler and far more elegant. Everything you think, say, and do plants a seed, and those seeds eventually bear fruit. It's the ultimate cause and effect system, built right into the structure of existence. No one is keeping score. No one is tallying your mistakes or your virtues. You create the momentum of your own life through your actions. Your past shapes your present, and your present shapes your future. That naturally leads to the idea of rebirth. Not reincarnation in the sense of a single eternal soul hopping from body to body, but the continuation of patterns, tendencies, and consequences across lifetimes. It's like lighting one candle with another. The flame continues, but it's not the same flame. Your choices ripple forward, influencing what comes next, long after this particular physical form has dissolved. And that brings us to one of the most profound and challenging teachings in all of Buddhism: anatta, or non-self. According to the Buddha, what we call me isn't a fixed, permanent entity. It's more like a river, constantly moving, constantly shifting, never the exact same from one moment to the next. Thoughts arise and fade. Emotions come and go. The body changes cell by cell. The idea of a solid, unchanging soul simply doesn't hold up when you look closely at your own experience. Far from being cold or depressing, this insight is meant to be liberating. If there is no rigid, unchanging self, then nothing about you is stuck. You're not bound by who you used to be. You're not locked into your old habits, your old fears, or your old identity. Everything can flow, evolve, and transform. These three teachings, karma, rebirth, and non-self, form the backbone of the Buddhist worldview. They don't require a creator God to make sense. They don't rely on divine intervention. They simply point to the incredible truth that your life is shaped from the inside out, moment by moment, through countless choices, small and large. And that realization opens the door to real freedom. One of the most defining features of Buddhism is that it doesn't ask you to believe first and understand later. It flips the script. It tells you to look, to observe, to test, and to see for yourself. Truth, in the Buddhist sense, isn't something you inherit. It's something you uncover, like a spiritual treasure hunt, where each moment of awareness reveals another hidden piece. This emphasis on direct experience over blind belief is woven throughout Buddhist history, and two famous stories capture it perfectly. The first comes from a disciple named Saruta. A wandering ascetic once challenged him, saying, "Your path is incomplete because you Buddhists don't believe in a creator God." Saruta didn't argue, didn't debate, didn't try to win the philosophical battle. Instead, he said something deeply practical. Even if a creator exists, why would that be a reason to abandon the path that leads us to peace? We follow these teachings because we've seen their results with our own eyes. In other words, whether a God exists or not isn't the heart of the matter. What matters is whether a path helps you become freer, kinder, calmer, and this one does. The second example is even more famous. The Kalama Sutta, often called the Buddhist Charter of Free Inquiry. A group of villagers once told the Buddha they were confused because every teacher who passed through their town claimed to have the truth. Instead of saying, "Believe me," the Buddha did something revolutionary. He told them not to accept anything simply because it's tradition, widely repeated, written in scripture, spoken by elders, or even taught by a revered teacher. When you know for yourselves that something is wholesome and leads to benefit, follow it. When you know for yourselves it is unwholesome, abandon it. This wasn't a rejection of guidance. It was a reminder that wisdom becomes real only when it's personally verified. Buddhism doesn't hand you conclusions, it hands you tools. And that's the essence of this tradition. You're not asked to swallow doctrines, fear punishment, or cling to dogma. You're invited to explore the landscape of your own mind, to walk the path step by step, and to trust the insight that arises from your own direct experience. So as we reach the end of this journey, let's bring everything back into focus. Buddhism isn't trying to disprove God or dismiss anyone's faith. It simply offers a different lens, one that doesn't depend on divine intervention, but on the clarity and courage that come from looking deeply into your own experience. Instead of placing the weight of your life on belief alone, Buddhism invites you to step into the role of investigator, explorer, and witness of your own mind. And that's where its power truly lies. You're not asked to surrender your thinking. You're not asked to silence your doubts. You're encouraged to use them, to examine what brings peace and what brings suffering, to trust the wisdom that rises from seeing reality as it is. It's a path grounded not in fear, but in freedom, not in obedience, but in awareness. And when you start to see that the answers aren't locked in distant heavens, but quietly glowing inside your own consciousness, something shifts. Life becomes less about searching for someone to save you, and more about awakening the insight already waiting within. If this perspective spoke to you, if it opened something or challenged something, feel free to let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear what resonated with you most. And if you'd like more videos that explore the deeper layers of wisdom, consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. My fellow truth seekers, keep questioning, keep observing, and keep turning inward. The deepest answers aren't out there somewhere. They're already alive within you. Stay curious, stay compassionate, and I'll see you in the next one.